John, thanks very much for coming to the first ever KMRE pledge drive. And I'm wondering if you can let our listeners know some of the things you've been working on while you've been on County Council.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the invite. I'm glad to be here. John Scanlon. I'm the County Council member at large. I was just elected in November and started up in January. And it's been busy since I've been on council. One of the things I really like about this job is I have spent way too much time in the last decade, probably even longer than that, in front of a computer screen. And now on County Council, I spend a lot of time on my feet, out in the community, at events, and learning from people. And so some of my priorities when I ran for office last year, I've continued in office this year. And those are all about affordability. It's about access to housing and shelter, access to childcare for families, and access to healthcare. And those are three of the issues that I've been working on so far since I've been on County Council.
That's awesome. What kinds of forward motion have you seen?
Yeah, a number of things. So, for example, on housing and shelter, myself and council members Galloway and Buchanan started up a new task force in the council to assess shelter options in the county. So the county's Health and Community Service Department is going through a review of the winter shelter season from this past winter and looking to projections for next year. And what we'd like to see is for the county to stand up year-round shelter. So we're reaching out to community members over the next few weeks, some of the nonprofit organizations, faith-based communities, and others who've been involved in providing shelter across the county to learn from them about what might work best if we were to go to year-round shelter in the county.
Where would something like that be housed?
It could be a number of different places. Last year, the county leased some buildings that were either underused or were about to undergo renovation and were available over the winter. So you'd have to find new space for additional year-round shelter in the county.
How confident are you that it could be done affordably?
Yeah, so we're going to have to, like you said, find the space and then find the budget for it. But this is a budget year. So later this year, the executive Sidhu will propose a budget to the council and we'll review it. And we have that opportunity to potentially add in some areas or cut in some areas. So this might be an area where we don't see a lot of new revenue coming in for something like year-round shelter. So we likely would have to cut from somewhere in order to be able to fund it. And that'll be a tough decision, but I think year-round shelter is something that we need in our community.
Right. Now, you said you were also working on childcare. Can you tell me about some of your efforts in that area?
Yes, so I am the council representative to the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force, which is a group set up by the county to help oversee the Healthy Children's Fund. So we just last week received a report from the task force looking at the last 18 months and what has happened so far. And then we'll receive our next report from them in the fall. They report to us twice a year. So there's a lot of good work going on in childcare. The county used a lot of the federal money that came in during COVID to then expand childcare access in the county. So they've created new slots across the county. A lot of the new affordable buildings, affordable housing buildings that have gone up, such as the Millworks project down by the port. A lot of those new buildings include childcare from the start in those buildings. So the county has invested in some of those programs. We should be hearing about a few new contracts going out and a few new grants going out, expanding childcare access in the county. And we know we have a lot more to do because the need keeps increasing across the county. So there's a lot more to do. But one thing I really like about what the county is doing is that as part of setting up the Healthy Children's Fund, they invested in evaluation from the beginning. So they just signed a contract with an outside team that'll evaluate the program. And I think that'll be really helpful because then we'll learn more about what's working, what isn't working, and where we can adjust.
So you said this report just came out. Can you tell me a little bit more about what struck you about the report? What were some of the key findings?
Well, some of the key findings that I think a lot of us knew this who've been watching is we are a bit behind. The timeline that was originally proposed for getting some of the funds out, getting some new contracts signed and some new grants out was a bit aggressive, and we are a little behind. But I'd say maybe we're only behind by a few months in that process. We heard an update from the health department, from the executive's office last week that talked about some of the new things that are coming in over the next few months. So I think we'll be back on track getting some of those contracts out to help expand access in the county. I think probably by midsummer or early fall, we should be back on track.
Right. John, how long have you been in Whatcom County?
I've lived in Whatcom County for 5 years.
Okay. What are you struck by when you think about this place and the sense of community here?
Oh, there's so many things. I mean, I think about right now how, so many of my friends and neighbors are gearing up for Ski to Sea. And I've been a participant in Ski to Sea the past few years. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss it this year. But you just see the community come together around that event. And, I was particularly struck by the first year when it was really back after the pandemic, and just seeing how many people were out from, the volunteers along the race. I tend to do the bike leg, so you always see people out and people volunteering, people clapping and cheering, and our sheriff's deputies out there making sure everybody's safe on the course. And then it's so great to be able to come together at the end of the event in Fairhaven with the festival. So that's one event that I definitely see as something that brings the community together, all the way from Mount Baker to Bellingham Bay. There's other events I've been to as well where people come together. For example, about a week or so ago, I went to an event in Kendall that was hosted by the Foothills Community Alliance. And they had documented needs in the community, everything from public safety to recycling to clean water needs in the community. And then they brought in the partners that they would need to help make improvements in the community. So there were staff there from the sheriff's office, some folks from the county's health department, some of the local nonprofits that work in the community, and I was there for county council. And so they've got a number of good things going on in the community there. And coming up next week is the health fair, the community health fair. That'll be at the East Whatcom Regional Resource Center in Kendall. So that's a community where you see people coming together to solve and identify needs in their community and then to reach out when they need help from outside the community.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about the health fair. Who's that open to?
It's open to the community. There'll be a number of different things there, from health checkups from some of the mobile health teams in the community, blood pressure tests, blood sugar tests. You can get dental care on site, and there'll be a lot of resources out there for the community.
Okay, that's great information. Tell me, why do you think community is important?
Community is so important. It's what I grew up around. When I was growing up, my family was involved in the community, and I saw that impact from my dad. When I was growing up, was the business manager for the school district and was always at the school board meetings. My mom was an elected official at the local level on the board of the library. And my grandmother was involved, who we lived with. She was involved in so many different organizations, from the Chamber of Commerce to her local realtors. She was a real estate agent. To entities like the Historical Preservation Commission. So I grew up around people who were just very much involved in the community, and I saw how that's good for yourself, because then you're also building friendships, you're building relationships that you'll have for life, and it feels good to be active and involved in your community. And we know what that impact is, that when we all work together, we can achieve better outcomes. Rather than just kind of sitting around at home alone and maybe complaining about things. We can get stuff done when we work together.
What kind of a role do you think local media, local radio, local, access to local news and information, what kind of a role does that play? Why is that important?
Local media has a great and huge role to play in informing the community about what's going on, and as a place for people to get together and gather and learn from each other. So I'm a big supporter of local media. It's been great to see some changes in our community, having more local reporting, from the work at KMRE to, I think, about outlets like Cascadia Daily and what they're doing in our community, Salish Current, and all the different regional and local outlets that we have across the county. Actually, I just mentioned the Foothills Community Alliance earlier. They have a new local news source out of the Foothills Community Alliance that is just for that community. So I'm so glad that we're seeing more of that because it's so helpful for people to communicate and people to learn about what's going on. I hope people come out this weekend and donate to KMRE and support this great organization that's bringing us together, that has great programming for all of us. I like listening to a lot of the podcasts to learn more about the community. So please support today.
That's great. Thank you, John.